invite you to stand and sing with us. Next few moments to take a few deep breaths, to center yourself, to be present. Give yourself the room, the possibility to experience some connection this morning. Let's sing this together. You won't ever stop chasing my heart, won't stop ever proclaiming no containing. Your love won't stop. Your love won't stop. Oh, you won't stop. Never stop chasing my heart. Won't stop. Ever proclaiming your love for us. There's no containing. Your love won't stop. Your love. As you're coming in this morning, we want to give you a second to catch your breath, and if you're like me, maybe clear some of the pollen out of your system. Everybody's coming in with something different this morning, a different life, a different experience, a different part of who they are. And we are in a season that is leading up to Easter. And you're going to hear more from David today about resurrection and why that matters. We're going to sing a song that kind of speaks to this lead up to the resurrection. And it might be familiar to you. And we talk here at Watershed a lot about reclamation and what that means. And so as we sing this song, I want to invite you to do what we always invite you to find what you need.
I see the King of Glory coming on the clouds with fire. The whole earth shakes, the whole earth shakes. I see His love and mercy washing over all our pain. The people sing, the people sing, Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the to take their place with open faith, endless faith. I see a near revival stirring as we pray and sing. We're on our knees, we're on our knees. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the heal my heart and make it clean. Oh, open up my eyes to the things unseen. Show me how to love like you. Break my heart for what restores. Oh, everything I am for your kingdom's cause. As I walk from earth into eternity. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest. Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna
thank you again for singing with us. And all of this, the music that we do, is a space for us to connect to one another, to connect to the vine. And we want to give you a little bit of space to greet each other in the next few moments. So let's do that, and then we'll continue with the service.
Hey, good morning, good morning. All right, enough of that. There's always a few rebellious, and they're always in the front row. No, seriously, we'll wait on you guys. No, it's all good. You have things to do, right? That's important stuff to take care of. Hi, my name is Matt, and I am the lead pastor here. Oh, thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, I need that. Excuse me. So, a couple of things I want to make you aware of. First of all, if you're brand new with us, and that would be a lot of you today. I see so many faces that I've yet to have the chance to be introduced to. Not that you can actually introduce somebody's face to you, but you know what I mean in all of that. So glad you're here. One of the best ways to kind of get the ball rolling is to fill out what we call our connection card. It's this online form, and it kind of helps us know, all right, how did you find us? What are some of the things that you're interested in? And kind of helps us sort of grease the wheels for whatever you would want to happen next here at Watershed, even if it's just an acknowledgement or the opportunity to connect in some way, shape, or size with some of the stuff that's going on here. And so if you feel comfortable doing so, would love to have you do that. Also, there's a couple of things that we've been talking about now for the past month along the lines of groups that we call affinity groups. And so there's these sort of loose affiliation groups that get together, and I always butcher this part of the announcement, and I know that's why some of you are already chuckling, but I am going to nail the landing today, I hope. This actually officially fully gets started next month, and the first Sunday of this coming month, I'm already nervous. Can you hear it in my voice? Is the affinity group that's like the Gen X millennial group. And so if you're kind of in that mid to late 30s, late 40s, early 50s, thank you. I was getting there. I have no idea what that means. So they're a lively bunch, and they're going to be grabbing lunch afterwards next Sunday. And then there's an affinity group that meets every Sunday, so there's something for everyone. And if you follow the connection card, or excuse me, the QR code, it kind of spells out who's doing what and when. And then also, this is a picture, or these are pictures of the facilitators for our spring blocks that are getting started later on in April. And I had the chance to hang out with these folks via Zoom this past week, just kind of talking through, okay, what does orientation look like? What does facilitating these conversations look like? And all I can tell you is they are incredibly excited to do this. There's so much energy around this actually happening in some ways for the first time since the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, we had a host of blocks, or what we call, our small groups are called blocks here at Watershed. So there's a lot of these happening before the pandemic, and so there's a bit of a resurgence of these things. And there's 7 total, 5 different locations, 6 if you count the men's only group. So if you identify as male, there's a group for you that you can connect to that actually meets here in this space as well. And then there's a virtual representation, because I know some of you, because of your situation, maybe you travel for work, or you live a little farther away. Like we have folks that drive in from Rock Hill and Gastonia and so on and so forth. There's an opportunity for that to be a virtual expression for you as well. And I really want to encourage you to get connected to this. It's a way to meet some new folks, but then also have some really interesting conversations around what's happening, not just in our world, but in our culture, in our lives, and do that through some of the stories that we grew up with. For those of us who grew up in more traditional settings, reframing some of these in a really provocative way. It should be a lot of fun. And then also, there's something called Wild Watershed. There's a meeting next Sunday evening, I believe. If you follow the QR code, it gives you more information. But there's been some energy surfacing around the idea of what it means to create, spiritual experiences, relational connection that is more earthy. It's more rooted in outdoors, more contemplative at some level. And so if that's something that you find energy in and you want to be a part of the conversation and maybe kind of helping create that experience moving forward, then Sunday evening next week is an option for you to jump into. And then lastly, I don't. If you've been around for a while, you probably are aware of this. If you have children in Greenhouse, you're probably aware of this. But I guess it was middle of October, in the transition from Blair Gore, who had been here for 5 years as our family ministry pastor. Blair, if you're watching this morning, shout out to you, girl. But Blair took a job in D.C. Doing just a really important work in a different professional lane. And so in the process of her transitioning to her new thing, Kelsey Smith, who has been a part of Watershed for years now, she got volunteered, so to speak, to step into an interim role along with Austin Applefield. And together, they've sort of been this tandem of stability and leadership for our kids in the Greenhouse expression. Simultaneous to that, that gave us time, and her patience and her commitment. She and Austin both gave us time as a staff and as a community to ask, all right, what do we need here? Like, what's the next, how do we piece this together moving forward? And I guess it was about November, we made the decision, we need a part-time person to start to be a permanent, to play a permanent role in that, in terms of being not just the children's director, but to actually be our children's pastor on a part-time basis. And so we opened up sort of the portal to take on applications, and Kelsey said, I'd like to throw my hat in the ring, and we're like, you better. And so she did, and I'm super excited because last weekend we kind of everything came together, and she now moving forward will be our permanent children's pastor, part-time. Come on up here, Kelsey. Give her a big round of applause. You can tell it's March Madness around here. So thank you, first of all, for the last 6 months. I don't know what we would have done if it hadn't been for you and your partner in crime, right, Austin? But can you give us just a few minutes, help us get to know you a little bit, and then maybe talk a little bit about like why you said yes to this?
They go hand in hand for me, honestly. My husband, Graham, and I and our kids, as we've grown, have been a part of Watershed since about 2015, off and on. Graham and I were both pastors for a long time in churches, and Watershed was always a haven for us. We got to come, we got to bring our kids, we got to be in here and not be responsible for anything and learn how to love community again. It took time, it really did. My husband and I moved to Alabama in 2019, and we missed here so much. Our family's here, Watershed is here, and it brought us right back truly. Being here and these people we've been a part of blocks, we've been a part of worship, and kids and everything have walked through our marriage with us. They've walked through having our second daughter and everything with us. But I grew up going to church. I grew up, my dad is a pastor, my mom was the person at the piano playing, I was always the kid under the pew asleep, and swore that I would never be in a ministry position, and that has clearly not happened. So I have found a love for church and kids and community, and being in Watershed has re-earthed that in me too. That got shut down for a while, being in different churches in the evangelical world, but coming back here and seeing what it can be and not what it's always been has done something to relight that fire within me. And so I have loved every minute of the last 6 months. It has been so much fun. Working with Austin has been a dream. She has been here longer than I have and has also just known the ins and outs of classrooms and kids and families and systems. And I am so thankful that I've got to walk with her through this too, so that I could confidently be like, hey, Matt, I really do want to walk into this role that Blair has done so well for so long. And I'm very thankful that you guys as a community are letting me be a part of your children's lives. I really do think we can learn so much from kids. I don't think that their curiosity is ever a burden or bad. And even if they ask 8,000 questions about the wrong thing, it's still lovely and wonderful, and we want to cultivate that. So I'm also going to shamelessly plug, if you also find yourself wanting something more or something different, walk down the greenhouse hallway and just walk into a room. Come talk to me about being with the kids. Do something outside your comfort zone, because those kids will change your life more than you could ever imagine. And it is a beautiful, beautiful thing to be able to sit in the room and have them teach you something and realize, like, I don't have to talk all the time. They are loving and brilliant, and they are the best, truly. They really are.
Thank you. Well said. And the days ahead are going to be exciting. The fact that you are now officially a part of our team in ways that you haven't been able to be in the past. And would you give Kelsey another round of applause this morning? Thank you so much. So, she beat me to the punch on one of the things that she mentioned in terms of there's a whole world, there's a Watershed world down that hallway, and if you never venture into that space, I really wish you would. It would be to your advantage to walk through there from time to time and look in the rooms and look at what's taking place. And it's also to say that that area does not happen unless our community comes around it and supports it. And so as we move into the summer months, as we move into the fall, it's super important that we support what Kelsey is attempting to do and what Watershed is coming around in terms of children and their spiritual development, their connection, their love of God, and then our modeling that with them and alongside of them. So that's a long way of saying we need volunteers. We need folks to step in and step up. We ask folks to volunteer 1 to 2 times a month, so it's not overwhelming. If you're a little nervous about, well, what would I do and how would that work, there's really good orientation. There's really good training. There's a kind of a buddy system that you get invited into, so you're not thrown into the fire, the frying pan too quickly and all of that. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of enjoyment. It's a way to connect to people too. Some of the best relationships that exist at Watershed started because 2 people were hanging out together, loving on kids. And so that's a plug for being a volunteer here with Greenhouse. And the second thing is, in order for us to do this well, there's always a conversation around resources. And for the past month, I've stood up here and I've started to reference, hey, listen, there's something coming. And the way that we fuel that with our resources is going to be even more important than it's always been. And so this change, this direction is going to require more of us financially as a church. And I know for those of you who've been around for a while, you've kind of know the journey that we've been on for the last 3 years and how we've continually becoming more stable, more sustainable. Things are better than they've ever been, and we're still not home. And so we need to up the recurring giving around here, somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000 a month. A couple of you recently came to me and said, hey, I'm gonna be a part of that. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. I know for some of you, you took a break over the last year because there were things that you just had no choice in doing so. And if there's ever an opportunity or a moment to step into, this is one of those moments here at Watershed. And so there's real secure ways to give here through our app. There's actually a matching program for some folks that work in places like B of A and Wells Fargo and things of that nature. And if you have any questions about any of it, please come see me or shoot me an email at matt@watershedcharlotte.com. Thanks for being here this morning. And let's give it up for Kelsey one more time.
So I mentioned that we're in a season leading up to Easter, and the crux of that Easter story is around this idea of resurrection. And the week leading up to that we call Holy Week, and there's this part of the story that's about Good Friday, about the death part of resurrection. And as we were trying to figure out songs and, how do we artistically try to engage this conversation, I think the thing that came up for me was this thought that you can't have resurrection without death, and simultaneously everything about our experience in life is fighting death. We're trying to not die. Everything about that's in our bodies, everything that we rail against, everything that we push against is to move away from death. And simultaneously, you don't get resurrection without death. And so we're going to sing a song that kind of just sits in that tension. It sits in the tension of the acknowledgement that life is hard and that death happens, and that also resurrection is possible. And so again, as we jump into this season, this Easter season, you all have different experiences of this story of death and resurrection. And so I hope, and our prayer is that you would find exactly what you need in these next few moments. To me, another door revolving, shipwreck tear upon the shore. Will I wake from this stream, all this weight I carry, from all these versions of myself? Now it's time to come clean. So you jump in the river, 'cause you can't live without it. The tide draws you deeper, and it chews you up and spits you out. So you jump in the river, and it's all unfamiliar. You give into the water, and it chews you up and shows you how to flow. And this is how you learn it's time to let go. There's this place I'm going, who's the face that's looking back?
I should really watch those before the Sunday where we're debuting them, so that last week I had to race to the stage because it was very short. Matt's finding out for the first time that I don't watch them. He sends them to me and he's like, "What do you think of this?" It's awesome, man. Thanks for putting in that time. It was good though. Well done, sir. I'm David. I work here, one of the pastors here on staff. Thanks, yeah, that's me. So we're kicking off a new series at the risk of being a little repetitive, because Austin's intro to that song was kind of everything I was going to say about the introduction to this series. It's kind of confusing too. We've been talking about a lot of Austins this morning. We have multiple phenomenal Austins here with us, and they all do great work. So if you are in Austin, thank you for your service. But what is this series about? So just a little background. So when we were coming up, and by we I mean our teaching team. So if you're new with us, I am not the only person who speaks here, which might, by the end of this morning, feel like really good news to you. But we have a rotation of folks, and those folks come together kind of collaboratively and collectively to chart and map out our various teaching series throughout the year. We have one retreat kind of at the beginning of the year, and then we have periodic kind of meetings throughout, and a text message group and things like that. And when we were trying to come up, not with what was our sort of our Easter season series, but our Advent or our Christmas series for 2024, it was pointed out that there's this idea around Easter that has kind of been never explicitly sort of made the backbone of a series, but has often sort of been sort of the undercurrent of a particular Easter talk, like Easter Sunday itself, or just season. And it's this idea that resurrection happens. And so if you remember, if you were here with us back in December, our series was Advent Happens, with the idea being that more so than just this thing that maybe happened 2,000 years ago, the birth of Jesus, whatever that looked like, and there's all sorts of conflicting information, and oftentimes the Christmas season is approached through like an apologetic lens, if you know what that means. So it's like the most important thing we can do with our faith is defend it like scientifically or factually against skeptics and deniers and people who don't think that, you know, Christianity is true or real or whatever. And so people get really, really hung up on defending the historicity, like, did this really happen? And so we did that for Advent, and the thinking was, well, this has kind of been an ongoing theme for Watershed over the years around Easter, but what if we've never really been explicit about it? So what if we did an entire exploration, an entire series about this idea of resurrection, but through that same lens? Because I think even maybe more so than the nativity story, the Advent story, the Christmas story, people both like inside and outside of what is called Christianity, people get really, really hung up over the apologetic angle of the story of Jesus, particularly the crucifixion and the resurrection. There's almost like a rabid sort of obsession of, like, if we can just prove that this really happened, that it literally happened, and that word literally is doing a lot of work for these folks, of which I once identified. Well, then Christianity is obviously true, and we can, use that to justify taking over the world. Which is what a lot of people seem to be trying to do these days. And historically, not just us. We're just like the most recent bearers of that colonialistic imperialist torch. And so the purpose of the series is multifold. Just a few disclaimers. It is not to like cause you necessarily to like doubt your faith or anything like that. We're not trying to like do like an inverse apologetics where we're trying to just prove it all wrong or something like that. We are, or at least I am, I won't speak for my colleagues, I am going to complicate the story for you a little bit. But the hope is that it opens you up to maybe possibilities that didn't necessarily seem to be on the table before when it comes not just to the story of Jesus, the story of the crucifixion, the resurrection, but maybe faith in general, your experience of God as such. And so come into it hopefully with that kind of curious, possibility-oriented mindset, and you'll do just fine. And that's true for every Sunday here at Watershed. So, where to start? Where I wanted to start was the book of Mark, but that would be skipping ahead to this other series that we're doing, this Mark series, and I have to wait till like February of 2026 to get to that part in the book of Mark. So we're going to skip to a different gospel this morning. We're going to hang out in the book of John. And it's going to be by far the most famous passage in John, perhaps the most famous passage in the entire Bible. You don't need to put it up on the screen yet, but in a moment we'll look at a passage, a section of John chapter 3, where Jesus is talking to Nicodemus, who was a religious leader of his time, probably. But just a little bit of setup first, okay? And this is the part where I'm maybe going to scramble your faith or something a little bit, so buckle up. So the book of John is most likely the last written of the Gospels, okay? So the Gospels are these biographies of Jesus. They were all written, they weren't the first things written in the New Testament. Those are probably the authentic letters of Paul, which I had the opportunity to rehearse with a class this morning. That would be 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, 1 Thessalonians, Romans, Philippians, Galatians, and Philemon. Those are the ones that we are pretty positive Paul wrote. The other people are just using his name for their personal gain. That doesn't mean they're wrong or bad. They just weren't Paul. So, but those authentic Pauline letters were probably written first, probably around 50 AD or CE. We use CE now. I don't remember when that happened, but and then these Gospels were probably written a number of years later. The book of Mark is probably our first one, probably around 70 AD. It's kind of disputed whether it was written right before the destruction of Jerusalem, around 70 AD, whether it was during or right after. But that's the one that we're most sure about. The other three, we just think are later. How much later is it, if you're just sitting here and you're like, you know what I need in my life? I need a dissertation. Well, trying to date one of the other Gospels is an awesome dissertation opportunity. It's a question that's launched thousands of dissertations and probably will launch thousands more in the future. But most likely, Matthew was probably late first century, anywhere between 80 to the 90s CE. Luke, maybe around that time. But there are a lot of people who think that Luke and then John were either written either at the very end of the first century or sometime in the beginning of the second century. And if you just do the math, that means that they were almost certainly, so almost that I want to say certainly, but I don't really say anything with certainty, almost certainly not written by the people who historically we have claimed wrote them. So let me see here. Someone named John might have written John. It was a common name back then. But it probably wasn't John, the son of Zebedee, the brother of James, not to be confused with James, the brother of Jesus. Like I said, these are common names. But the reason it was attached to John was to give it a kind of apostolic authority. And we talked about this a little bit in relation to Mark last week, for those of you who are here. This conferring of authority was going to be really important in order to give authority to these books, to give them staying power. I even alluded to, and this is a tangent, but I even alluded to last week a kind of personal hobby of my conspiracy theory of mine about the authorship of John, where it was actually perhaps this guy Joseph of Arimathea, because Joseph was wealthy, and that Joseph of Arimathea is actually also the same person who is Lazarus in the book of John, and that person is the same Joseph who is actually called Barnabas, who was a friend of Paul. It's a whole thing. I didn't make this up. I read it for someone, but that's not what this morning's about. I just wanted to share that because it's fun. We don't know who wrote this book. We genuinely don't, okay? By the time it was written, and this is important, this is actually really important always, but I think it's maybe especially important because of certain political realities right now. So when this book was written, by the time it was written, the Temple of Jerusalem had been destroyed. And Christians, who probably weren't necessarily even calling themselves Christians at the time, they still saw themselves as sort of an offshoot of Judaism or another expression of Judaism. But at this point, there was a good chance that the followers of Jesus, the people who saw Jesus as the Messiah, were finding tension, maybe to the point of being excluded, expelled from, or at least weren't getting along well with other groups of Judaism. And so we're experiencing tension within Jewish synagogues. Okay? And Jewish synagogues were all over the Roman Empire, not just in what was left of Jerusalem, but, so the Jewish diaspora, which, at this point, even before the destruction of Jerusalem, Jewish people were all over the place as part of the Roman Empire, and there were synagogues in all the major cities. And so if these followers of Jesus, who initially used these synagogues as their gathering places, were not feeling welcome there anymore, then a lot of the book of John is to try to give them an alternative way of understanding sort of the rooting or the grounding of their faith, so they didn't have, no one had the temple anymore. The Romans had destroyed it, and now they weren't necessarily feeling welcome in these synagogues. And so a lot of the book of John is oriented towards giving them sort of a new foundation that would allow it, to exist independently of these sort of physical locations that they weren't fitting in anymore. And in the context that it was written and sort of received, that would have been a really liberating, empowering message. But if you extract it from that context, hundreds, even thousands of years later, there are parts of this gospel, and really all of them, but especially this one, that can read as deeply anti-Jewish. And so it's really important to hold that tension gently and delicately, because this book was never meant to be seen as justification to be anti-Semitic or to be anti-Jewish. And so these nuanced distinctions are important. They're important then. They're important now. They're important now because it could be really easy, for example, to look at the actions of the state of Israel and not differentiate the actions of a government from a people, which is Jewish folk who are diverse and who have always been diverse. Just like, and we talk about this all the time, just like there has never been one monolithic expression of Christianity, there has only always ever been Christianities, a plurality of responses to the encounter with Jesus. That's true of Judaism as well. That's true of all faiths, spiritualities, traditions, Western, Eastern, indigenous, and otherwise. They're a plurality. And so, I don't know, I think it's a timely reminder as I'm about to engage with a text that out of context could be read a certain way that has been weaponized against people for centuries. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, cool. Well, let's dive in. Let's look at John chapter 3. This is, of course, the birthplace of John 3:16. We're not going to read John 3:16, but you all already know that one. This is sort of the prologue to John 3:16. It's what happens right before. And so Jesus' ministry is begun. One other quick sidebar about the book of John. The other Gospels are at least attempting on some level to be historical. And it's an open question as to how much of them we should understand literally, historically. That the way that we as modern Westerners think of history is very different than the way ancient people thought of history. And so some of the questions that we ask wouldn't have occurred to them and vice versa. So it's kind of important to hold all of this a little bit loosely, but more so than John. The other three Gospels are trying to present a kind of coherent, linear, and consistent chronology. John is doing something completely different. John is doing like a mythic, epic theology that's kind of juxtaposing Jesus over and against rival saviors, one of whom, of course, was Caesar. But the author of John was even thinking kind of more mythically than that. So, but within the context of the story, Jesus' ministry has been going on, and Nicodemus, who is one of the religious leaders, comes to him by cover of night so as to not provoke curiosity. And he asked him questions, and this is kind of where we're picking up the story. Jesus answered him, "Very truly," and I'm sure most of you have heard this before, "very truly I tell you, no one can see the kingdom of God without being born from above." Nicodemus said to him, "How can anyone be born after growing old? Can one enter a second time into the mother's womb and be born?" So he's taking Jesus very literally here. And Jesus answered, "Very truly I tell you, no one can enter the kingdom of God without being born of water and spirit." And this has been a confounding passage for people for a long time. Jesus continues, "What is born of the flesh is flesh, and what is born of spirit is spirit. Do not be astonished that I said to you, you must be born from above. The wind blows where it chooses, and you hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. So it is with everyone who is born of the Spirit." All right, there's a lot to unpack here. First off, you might notice that the word resurrection doesn't appear once in this passage. So what are we talking about? I should have used one of the resurrection passages in the Gospels or Paul's account in 1 Corinthians 15. And I bring up the Paul account. So 1 Corinthians 15, biblically speaking, because I know you're all taking mental notes or maybe even physical notes. I'd be so flattered about the chronology that I sort of breezed through a moment ago. But at least as far as we know, the first account in the New Testament, or what we have come to call the New Testament about resurrection, is not the Gospels. but it's 1 Corinthians 15, which Paul would have written probably in the 50s. And in that passage, Paul waxes eloquently about the nature of resurrection and the resurrected body. And translated into English, it reads pretty straightforwardly as okay, the resurrected body is clearly, it's a physical body. It's got substance, and it's different from flesh, whatever Paul means by flesh, but he's getting at the substantiality of it. But here's what thousands of years of completely alien context obscures for us. What Paul meant by spirit, this Greek word pneuma, which kind of means breath, it was something that was physical, something substantial, but it was fundamentally different than the sort of bodies that we occupy today. So much so that Paul's sense was that the stars, they didn't have any sense of what the stars were. I mean, there were some very intelligent people around the world who had a better sense of what stars were. At least they probably were suspicious that they weren't gods or like celestial beings. But Paul would have thought that. Jesus himself probably would have thought that. That was like the common understanding at the time. And so in 1 Corinthians 15, when Paul is talking about the resurrected body, he is saying that we're going to become like the stars, like the angels, like the gods. And so when Jesus here is talking about being born from above, it's highly likely that he had something similar in mind. So even though he's using a different language, he's not using the word resurrection, he's using this language of being born again or born anew, it's kind of the same idea, this sort of transformation of our existence. Now, here today we know that that's not what stars are. And even if there's a certain irony, if you follow sort of cosmological consensus that on some level the world and everything in it, including us, is at least made up of the same material substance as stars. That's not what Paul had in mind. He just got lucky. So what do we do with a passage like this? How do we make sense of something when it is framed in a context that is completely alien to ours? One option would be to just like, all right, I'm going to just put on my science blinders and just ignore everything that humanity has discovered scientifically, philosophically, biologically, cosmologically, et cetera, over the last 2,000 years, and I'm just going to adopt a first century worldview. And many of us, even unwittingly, were probably kind of trained to do that. The other option, and just to be clear, I don't recommend that. The other option, or the next option that may come to mind, is be like, all right, so this is so different than what I've been told. And assuming that wacko up on stage is even telling the truth, this kind of undoes everything. And if it doesn't just match on this like one-to-one basis of the way that it was handed to me in Sunday school or at summer camp or whatever, then you know maybe I've just been wasting my time, and I have to go not believe anything anymore. And I don't recommend that. I'm not here to send you down that path either. I think there's an opportunity here to sort of not necessarily like read between the lines or under the surface, but acknowledge the fact that what Jesus and Nicodemus are talking about here, what the biblical authors are talking about in every section of the Bible, in every context, is they are wrestling with the same spiritual, human, existential, divine realities, the very same questions, the very same encounters, the very same epiphanies on some level. Certainly that it's filtered through their context. It's filtered through their culture. It's filtered through what we might call a world picture, sort of the taken for granted, pre-reflective assumptions of their reality. And ours are, of course, much different. But they're wrestling with something there's a through line. There's a connectivity, a commonality between these concerns. And so what does it look like? Not just translate from one language to another, in this case, Greek. The book of John was written in Greek into English. So what's the English word for that? That's important, sure. But there's like a next step or a deeper layer of translation that has to happen. How do we take the spirit, and I'm using spirit here not in the Stardust way, but kind of in the sense that we mean the term. How do we take the spirit of what they're talking about by cover of night in this passage and then translate it to our context? So there's a few observations that I think are worth pointing out. Can you put the first part of the passage back up on the screen? So the first thing, let's just talk about the metaphor Jesus is using, being born again. Before he even gets to being born from above, being born again. And this is where my disclaimer about being hyper-vigilant about anti-Semitism gets really, really important. Because Nicodemus, as a faithful Jew, and Jesus himself as one as well, there would have been an understanding, and it looked a little bit different depending on which group of Judaism you were raised up in which school. You've probably heard of examples like the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Essenes and the Zealots, and there was these different camps, and there was even diversity within those camps. You know, one example, I talked about this in a class this morning. Jesus himself probably most closely aligned with the Pharisees. So even just food for thought in the future, even using Pharisee as a kind of pejorative, as an insult, misses potentially really badly the reality, which was Jesus actually quite admired the Pharisees, and the fact that he engaged with them primarily in the text that we have would have been a sign of respect. Disagreement within the diversity of Jewish culture was not necessarily oppositional. Oftentimes it was collaborative, it was generative, okay? So within that context, this whole idea of being born again would have been jarring based on the expectation that by Jewish birthright, by being born into the people of God, into the people of Israel, there would be some sort of alignment with God's favor, with God's plan, with the expectation that at some point the God of Israel was going to come down and boot out the Romans and then sort of like reestablish Israel as the prominent, kind of people or something like that. And so for someone like Nicodemus with that expectation, and even Jesus would have shared a version of this expectation, this whole idea of rebirth would have scrambled that a little bit. Wait a second. But it's by our birthright that we're even secure in this, and that notion of security or certainty is key here. Jesus is making a claim that immediately calls into question the sort of certainty that Nicodemus would have taken for granted, that he would have gone about his day simply assuming. The question for Nicodemus and his contemporaries wouldn't have been if we have this assuredness. It's more, how is it going to play out in light of this existing assuredness, this expectation of their gods inbreaking and defeat of the Roman gods. It was going to be a very literal, physical, political victory that they were expecting in real time, all right? And so Jesus is kind of calling that into question. Hop to the next one. So so at the end of that, when he talks about that first slide, he talks about being born of water and of spirit. So let's camp there for a second. So if you're familiar at all with the ancient world, or at least certain parts of the ancient world, water in particular was a chaos element. Many creation myths and creation narratives used water as a metaphor for like primordial chaos. Even the biblical creation accounts in the Hebrew Bible, which itself is drawn from a combination of kind of Hebrew oral traditions and maybe Sumerian or Babylonian myths and stuff like that, have kind of been redacted together. It says in Genesis 1 that the Spirit of God hovered over the waters. And so Jesus is invoking this sort of pre-creation imagery, chaos. So he's doubling down on sort of the uncertainty that this notion of being born again introduced to Nicodemus. He's doubling down on this sort of hurled into the voidness, this sense of undoing, decreation, sort of just completely untethering not just Nicodemus, but his entire sense of the world from this sort of foundation, from the assuredness that he had. And he unpacks it. What is born of flesh is flesh, what is born of spirit is spirit. And certainly Jesus has this ancient notion of spirit in mind. But I think we can see in that something that maybe we experience in our own time, in our own lives. We have things. It might not necessarily be a kind of birthright, although there are certainly people in our world today who are trying to contend for a certain way that this country or this world should be by nature of birth and blood and things like that. And Jesus is pushing back hard against that here. But this being born of spirit is spirit. Jesus talks about the wind blows where it chooses here. And he's using this as a metaphor for what it means to be born of the Spirit. The wind blows where it chooses. So you can see the effects of it. You hear the sound, but you don't know where it comes from or where it goes. He's using a metaphor that, again, it doubles, it triples down on this idea of spontaneity, this insecurity, this instability that he is calling Nicodemus to identify with. And that's kind of where I want to camp or close. Not yet banned, but we're getting there, to kind of kick off this series. So like I alluded to earlier, you're going to hear lots of different perspectives from the diversity of our teaching team. We're going to take these different places. Because I make the schedule and put myself at the beginning of the series, I sort of get to set the table. But I want what I kind of wanted to sort of kind of tee everyone up with is sort of this radical unsettling, this radical instability that Jesus is introducing, is inviting. It's the exact opposite thing. Nicodemus was wanting Jesus to give him sort of a renewed or sort of reimagined sense of assurance, and Jesus gave him the exact opposite of that. He invited him to identify with a kind of chaos, a kind of instability. Even the metaphor. I mean, resurrection would have been an idea that was very familiar to Jesus. This wasn't a uniquely Christian, or Paul didn't come up with this idea. It was already sort of in the culture. It was embedded. But Jesus uses an even more basic metaphor of new birth. The vulnerability of infancy, the vulnerability of being born anew into this sort of unsettledness that he invites into. And There's a question that those of us here at Watershed are constantly wrestling with when it comes to how to navigate or present theological ideas. On the one hand, and you'll kind of know which side we chose based on the word I'm about to use. On the one hand, you have reclamation, which is one of our values here. But the idea is that can we take an idea that maybe has over the years been strained, maybe from its original intent, or maybe has been appropriated in order to lord over or buffer ourselves over and against one another, to exploit, to marginalize, to consolidate power. Is it possible to take those terms, those concepts, and reclaim them? And that's usually a twofold process. The first is understanding better what they meant in their original context so that we're not abusing that. And then what does it look like to faithfully then translate that idea into our own context? And that's what we try to do here. But it can be difficult because some of us are so even unconsciously attached to like the original sense of those terms. And terms I have in mind here might be something like salvation or sin or resurrection or prayer. They can be practices. They can be, abstract theological ideas. But, we try to reclaim these things because the alternative is to just come up with new ideas, which for some of you, that probably feels like what we're doing from time to time. But generally speaking, completely coming up with new ideas, which I think is completely and totally valid, but that can also feel risky and scary. And so these things aren't necessarily opposed to each other. It's a classic both and, which we love here. But what I want to leave you with and kind of close out, and still no band, but I want to kind of reclaim or play with a couple words that maybe are associated historically with this conversation that Jesus is having, this idea of being born again. But I want to complicate that a little bit for you. And so some of those words would be, I'll give you all three of them. So the first one would be confession. The second one would be repentance. And then the third one would be transformation or salvation, which is kind of what Jesus is talking about here. All right, home stretch. So confession. If you grew up in a tradition that talked about confession, maybe it was more formal. If you grew up Roman Catholic, or in one of the more mainline, kind of high liturgical expressions of Christianity, then confession was typically associated with with guilt, with sin, often with shame. But I want to reframe that. I think a better notion of confession, which has at its root a better notion of sin, would be something as simple as speaking truth about fear. Okay? Most of what we think of as sin is fear. You have the innate fear that you or something related to you is not enough. I might even call that original sin. It's not something that you need to be afraid of. It's usually a narrative, a lie, a posture that you have towards a certain way of being in the world that's created a kind of insecurity in you. And then you have what you do about that, which is maybe sin proper. Oftentimes, our worst impulses are instances of lashing out first against ourselves and then against those around us. It's a fear response. It's some kind of trauma response. We are trying to fill the gap that we feel in fear internally. So confession is not saying sorry. It's not, It's not embracing your guilt or your shame or your wretchedness, because you are not guilty, shameful, or wretched. But rather, it's just being honest about the thing that scares you. Many of you are in confession all the time because you go to therapy, or you have healthy relationships, and I don't hear that as some of you not having healthy relationships if you're not in therapy. There's lots of ways to be healthy. You certainly don't need to confess to me or Matt or Dom or Kim, although Kim, well, maybe you can confess to Kim. But the point is, what would it look like to reframe or reclaim confession as simply just being honest about what you're afraid of? Usually that's one of the first steps towards disarming that thing. I can't tell you how many times that, whether it's in a formal therapeutic context or whether I'm just talking to my wife or a friend or something like that, when this thing that I've rehearsed in my head over and over and over again out loud and just seems so intractable, so impossible to disentangle, the moment I say it out loud, it's kind of like, really? Was that was what I was so stressed about? Confession disarms fear. So start there. Repentance, in the same vein then, is not self-flagellation. It's not any sort of self-deprecation. It's not like wallowing in your guilt or shame or your wretchedness. Repentance, metanoia is the Greek word that we get it from. It's just different thinking. You're just changing your posture, you're changing your relationship. So instead of going from sort of a transactional relationship to the world, to yourself, to God, to humanity, you're shifting that. So in the transactional thing, it'd be like, I have made a mistake, and so first I admit the mistake, and then I repent from the mistake, and then now I'm okay again, and then it's just rinse and repeat, ad nauseum. It's awful. But if we're completely reframing our relationship to these feelings that we have, then repentance is not any sort of transactional absolution, but it's just completely reorienting myself to that thing that I'm afraid of, that thing that is keeping me from authenticity with myself and with the people around me, which inevitably then leads to a kind of transformation. But here's the key, and this is probably the big takeaway. I think now, band, this would be your cue. No rush. I can ramble on for well over the 3 minutes that I have left if necessary. So, no, but this notion of transformation, it is not, to be clear, it is not a kind of, to kind of draw from the language Austin set up the song with, it's not a retreat from any kind of death or discomfort. It's not a going around, it's not building a bridge over it. It is through and out the other side. That's where the resurrection piece comes in, okay? It takes up and includes that thing. That's why you can't skip the confession part. It has nothing to do with like needing to make yourself right before God or anything like that. The divine relationship takeaway here is God already knows that you're good. It's you who have the weird ideas. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Guess I should have said that one earlier, louder, with a deeper voice. But no, you're just like it's okay to be afraid of stuff. And it's okay to name that, all right? The repentance is just practicing that, because it's not natural. It's not easy to be vulnerable. It's not easy to sort of embrace the uncertainty that Jesus is calling us towards here. And then that transformation is going to be kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I mean, Paul later literally says, work out that salvation with fear and trembling. That's nothing to do with like, because God's angry at you. Because it's hard. Which is why we invite you to do it together with people and in community. But it's never going to be like, all right, now I've done all the steps and now I have this new and better, kind of more progressive, now I have certainty with LGBTQ people included. Like, no. Yes, include the LGBTQ people. Or fill in whatever group was othered or marginalized or whatever. Like, it's yes and, but if anything, you're running headfirst towards uncertainty. You're running into a kind of instability, an inability to completely grasp and control the situation. Because really it's our attempts to do that. Those are the things that sort of buffer us over and against one another. So you're posturing yourself, you're repenting into, you're transforming into a kind of freedom. And so to kick this series off, to kind of conclude this morning, I do not want to reduce resurrection to just that. I think this is a metaphor, a symbol, an idea that has almost sort of limitless application possibilities. But just to start, what would it look like if sort of what we meditated on this week as we're kind of leaning into this series and leaning into this season was seeing resurrection as this radically disorienting force, but disorienting in a productive way, because what it does is it clears the stage and it opens us up, it postures us for new creation, new birth, new possibility. What if resurrection then was the very seed, not just the very seed, but the very fruit of possibility in our lives? So sit on that, think with that, meditate on that. Whatever you do, pray about that. Take that into this week. Listen to the band sing something really pretty. And grace and peace with you. Thanks for being here. We will see you next week.
As David mentioned, I want to give all of you a chance to sit with all of this. So we're going to sing. Feel free to take any posture that makes sense. You can sit, you can stand, whatever you need in the next few moments. May you find it.
Coming
Thank you so much for being here. So much for singing with us. And again, resurrection happens. It happens all the time, all around us. I hope this week you have lots of resurrection in your life. Have a great Sunday. We'll see you next week.